House of the Dragon. House of the Dragon. Say it with me now. House of the Dragon. House Targaryen. This show is going to be every single House Targaryen, House Daenerys, House everything, fire and fucking blood. This new spin-off series from the main series, Game of Thrones, entitled House of the Dragon, is going to include everything that a Targaryen fan loves and dreams of, including titties, riding dragons, explosions, more titties, burning cities, and did I mention big old dragon titty? No, but seriously. In this video, I want to quickly discuss some leaks involving some filming news on House of the Dragon, and also one of the core elements of what the first season, maybe the first couple seasons, will revolve around. That, of course, being bastard children and how their true lineage could determine the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. Now, before we get started, do me 3 real quick but massive favors, as they really help my channel out. The first thing is slap a like on this video. His like goal is going to be 420. Get it? Also, make sure you're subscribed, and then it's the most important part. Make sure after you've subscribed and slapped a like that you turn your notifications on, so that way you'll get an alert every single time I drop a video throughout this long night. Alright, now before we jump into the leaks, because there's not too much information on that. There's about to be major amounts of information pouring through the internet like fucking Niagara Falls. And I'm of course referring to the fact that they're going to begin filming next month. More details on that in a second. But in the meantime, one of the core dramatic elements that got everyone locked in the first season, obviously the show was a big set piece. Everyone was sort of waiting, fantasy fans rather, were sort of waiting for some form of high fantasy to be adapted correctly and successfully to television. But I'm of course referring to the fact that Cersei Lannister, who was the queen of the Seven Kingdoms at the time, and her children, Prince Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen, were all brought up in question as being bastard children. There was rumors of an affair between Cersei and Jaime Lannister, and of course those rumors turned out to be true, and that's a very similar thing that happens with Princess Rhaenyra, or Queen Rhaenyra, in the Dance of the Dragons, this new series, House of the Dragon. Her 3 children that she has, with Laenor Velaryon, her first husband, I'm of course referring to Jacaerys, Lucerys, Joffrey, who are all technically next in line for the Iron Throne were something to happen to Rhaenyra, but the 3 of them are described as having brown hair and brown eyes, and of course, since Laenor is a Valyrian and he has Valyrian features and so does Rhaenyra, their children should obviously have similar features to them. And because of this, a few of the lords throughout the Seven Kingdoms, and mainly the Greens, support the idea that Rhaenyra's children are all bastards, and even though she's next in line for the Iron Throne, entitled Princess of Dragonstone, technically her claim, because she has no true heirs to the Iron Throne, is null and void. Not only that she's a female, she has no claim to the Iron Throne, and when her father Viserys I dies, the Greens are technically in the right, because not only are Rhaenyra's children's bastards, but also Rhaenyra is a female, and before Jaehaerys changed precedents and changed laws, the Targaryen tradition was to always pass it to a male heir, skipping over any female heir that may have been born before them and may have a better claim to the throne since they're older and may have been taught more about the ways of running the kingdom, which is exactly the case with Rhaenyra. She grew up by her father's side and took place in all of his important meetings that he had in regarding business of the Seven Kingdoms. Queen Rhaenyra grew up thinking that she was going to take the reins of power from her father when he passed away. Because of this, she's the most fit to wear the crown, and regardless of the fact of her promiscuity and the fact that she may have been married to a gay man, because there was rumors that Laenor preferred the company of boys, but all that aside, Rhaenyra should have been the one to take the Iron Throne right away, and the Dance of Dragons should have never happened. But when you look at all the details surrounding this myth, and obviously they're going to be explored further on the show, and I'm sure we're going to get not necessarily a definitive truth for what's going to happen in the books, but Martin's already told that story, and until Fire and Blood Part 2 comes out, or until it's referenced in A Dream of Spring or in Winds of Winter, we may not know the actual lineage of her children, but the show is most likely going to give us some sort of definitive answer for that. But the 3 biggest things, or the 3 reasons why a lot of people think that, is that Harwin's features, although never technically described in the books, is that Rhaenyra's children, like I mentioned earlier, don't have Valyrian features. If both of their parents are truly Valyrian, then they should have the golden yellow white hair and purple eyes that Targaryens are known for. They should also have their prominent jawline and a lot of their what's described as higher up features. They look a lot better than the average person, and all of Rhaenyra's sons are all described as being pretty common and plain looking. And relating this further back to the first season of Game of Thrones, there's a pretty famous scene where Ned is flipping through a book of House Baratheon that describes their features, and he keeps running over the same thing, black affair, black affair, black affair. Well, obviously, if the father has darker features and the mother has blonde features, typically, the children come out having a combination of both, but mainly like a darkish brown type of hair. And when Ned is discovering this, he realizes that all of Cersei's children that she supposedly had with King Robert Baratheon all have blonde hair. Something doesn't add up. Now, this is going to be a strong... Get it? How strong? Harwin Strong is supposedly the real... Anyway, this is going to be a huge callback to that scene with Ned. And according to some of my sources, there is a scene that they're using to audition for the role of Otto Hightower, in which apparently Alicent's already been cast, but the few leads that they have for Otto Hightower, the scene that he's acting with and Alicent, because obviously they want to see how their chemistry is on scene. It's father and daughter. They're going to be sharing a lot of scenes throughout this first season and mainly throughout this first couple of seasons, but the scene that's being used to audition is actually a scene that's being described as something that has dialogue of mentioning like all of her children, all of them don't look anything like who their father is. They're all Valyrian. They're supposed to have Targaryen features, and none of this really adds up when you consider the fact that Harwin Strong was someone that Rhaenyra took a liking to early on when she was coming up, or growing up rather, in the Seven Kingdoms. Apparently, Ser Otto Hightower is mentioning to Alicent that the rumors surrounding Harwin and Rhaenyra are true, and that the reason why Harwin was killed brutally in Harrenhal was that Viserys found out that his daughter was being adulterous and wanted to remove any stain that could potentially tarnish her claim to the Iron Throne were he to meet an untimely demise. My sources go on to further state that apparently this conversation lasts for about 15 minutes, and this is the first scene that we actually see with Otto Hightower, and it takes place in the first couple of episodes. Now, if you're new here, of course, on my channel, we take that information with a grain of salt, because even if it turns out to be bullshit, and it likely is, it serves its core purpose in giving us entertainment throughout this long night. And another thing that sort of negates the idea that Rhaenyra's children are all bastard, and obviously this is something that's going to be explored further on the show. A lot of these aspects that have been debated throughout the Song of Ice and Fire fandom will be somewhat confirmed by this television series. Now, obviously, you could argue that since it's a retelling, so to speak, of the story, or an adaptation, that technically whatever the source material states is the real fact, but this series is going to likely take liberties with some of the bigger mysteries. The reason why I say this is a bigger mystery is because this story is told from the point of view of the unreliable narrator. Like many of George's POV characters, the narrator is telling us how they experience things or how they see things. And Yandel even says multiple times himself that even though one thing is stated and written down as fact, it all has to sort of be brought up for question because no one was actually there, or the winning side chose to tell a different version of the true events. So because this series is going to be showing us everything that actually happened, I think it'll be interesting to bring another dynamic of something that you could argue against the point of Rhaenyra's children all being bastards. And maybe it was just sort of a fluke that they all have brown hair and somewhat common features. We do know that Valyrians have inbred, the ones over in Westeros have inbred a lot, and to the point where you sort of flip a coin and it's left up to the gods as to whether they're going to be batshit insane or somewhat of a normal ruler. But anyway, one of the big things that you have to look into, or take into consideration rather, is that Laena, who is Laenor's mother, had a really good relationship with Rhaenyra. And if Rhaenyra was cheating on Laena's son Laenor and just basically disrespecting her house like that, I think it would have caused some sort of turmoil between them. And to sort of counterpoint that, you could argue that since Laena and Rhaenyra had such an interesting and open relationship and they were close, Laena likely likely knew her son preferred the company of boys and was okay with the fact that Rhaenyra had to satisfy her needs elsewhere. Maybe since they were so close, this is why Laena and Rhaenyra were able to maintain a relationship even though she was clearly cheating on her son. So just to sort of reiterate before I wrap this video up discussing the leaks, the first one is that Harwin's features are never technically described. House Strong's features are never like fully described as they are with other characters in the books, and the fact that Rhaenyra's children have brown eyes and brown hair, which House Strong did have, doesn't necessarily mean that it's a 100% dead giveaway that they are said to have somewhat strong features or common features. Another thing is that if it's true and Harwin was fucking Rhaenyra, and I didn't really mention this, but if they were doing this, Viserys didn't really, like, it didn't affect his relationship with Rhaenyra, even though she was blatantly going against tradition and cheating on her husband. If this were the case, and Viserys has a history of, like, sending away his brother who was developing a relationship with Rhaenyra, and they, you know, obviously Rhaenyra was married, since he sent his brother away when he received word of that, you would think that he would sort of do the same thing with Harwin. He allowed Harwin to do this, what, 3 times, to impregnate his daughter 3 times before actually doing something, and Harwin dies in a fire at Harrenhal, and there are rumors that Viserys, along with a few others, may have actually set that fire to sort of destroy the evidence, but King Viserys didn't allow or affect what Rhaenyra was doing in her personal life to, you know, sort of inflect on their relationship. He sort of kept it moving, and the fact that Harwin was allowed to be around Rhaenyra as long as he was just adds a whole new layer to this onion of familial drama. Now, it'll be interesting to see if, since Ser Otto Hightower's first scene is reportedly discussing Rhaenyra's children's lineage with Alicent, if this is true, it'll be interesting to see if the Greens wanting to dethrone Rhaenyra or remove her eligibility for the Iron Throne by pushing this claim to all the 7 kingdoms and trying to rally support for King Aegon II and Alicent and House Hightower and the Greens. It'll be interesting to see if the show sort of plays off of that. And in the first season, we're not really given privy to, you know, as watching the show, we're not really shown that much dialogue discussing the fact that maybe Rhaenyra's children are bastards, and instead are shown the side of the Greens, where they're more so pushing that claim because Alicent knows that Rhaenyra means her children are further down the line for the Iron Throne. Now, the last little bit of information regarding leaks, and I have mentioned some of the leaked information throughout this video, but the start date, the apparent start date for House of the Dragon, and that includes when the set crews arrive on location, the construction for the filming backdrops begins, and some of the cast who have already been, you know, cast in their roles will begin rehearsing scenes. And all of this is set to start during the week of, get this, motherfuckers, December 14th. That's a little over 2 weeks from now. And when that happens, we're going to have drones, we're going to have cameras, we're going to have extras, we're going to have tons of information leaking from the set of House of the Dragon. And this just means that we will be given more fuel throughout this long night in the wait for the first season for House of the Dragon. And the last little thing that I've been told, and I kind of knew this, but my source is claiming that a lot of the casting has already been finished, but the actors that are playing these roles aren't exactly famous, and that's in quotations. So this person states that announcing them to the public is kind of pointless, because for the most part, 50% of the cast are people that we've never heard of and maybe have seen them in plays and off-brand TV shows, but a lot of them are supposedly really good at what they do, and after this show finally airs, they will be cast into the spotlight and their talent will shine. But alright, I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you could please slap a like on this video. The like goal is going to be, wait for it, get it, 420. Also, make sure you're subscribed, and then this is the most important part. Make sure if you've already subscribed and you've slapped a like on this video that you have your notifications turned all the way on, so that way you'll get an alert every single time I drop a Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, A Song of Ice and Fire, The Mandalorian, any sort of content I cover throughout the wait for House of the Dragon, or as it's referred to on this channel, The Long Night. You'll get an alert every single time I drop a video throughout the wait. I want to thank you all so much for watching. Super special shout out to every single person you see listed right here. They are all members of my Patreon family over on patreon.com. And if you are all listening and watching are interested in showing some support, check out the link down below in the description or the link that's popped off during this video. I want to thank you all again so much for watching. My name is Mark, and this has been Ser Otto's Review.